Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about PayPal's story. It's really an interesting story. The way that PayPal came about was through a series of mergers and acquisitions. So let me just go back to the beginning with the earliest part of the PayPal story. And then we will come forward in time and see how it all kind of culminates into one big company. Let's start off by talking about Elon Musk's role at PayPal. You may not realize it, but he was actually an early employee there. He actually founded an online payment platform called XCOM in 1999. And in March of 2000, his online payment platform merged with another online payment platform called Confinity. And if you're wondering what Confinity was, well, it's basically what would eventually become Venmo and other services as well. Elon Musk was the CEO of XCOM and Max Levchin was the CTO of Confinity. And after the merger, Musk became the CEO of the new combined entity, and Levchin became the CEO. Peter Thiel was also a co-founder and early investor of Confinity, and he became the chairman of the executive board of this new combined company. The company decided to brand itself under the name PayPal. But before we get into the PayPal story, I want to take a moment to ask you to consider subscribing. We would love to have you join our community, so hit that subscribe button. And now let's get back to the PayPal story. And so in June of 2000, PayPal opened up its service to the public. But around this time, the dot-com crash happened. And if you're too young to remember the dot-com crash, it was basically a period in the early 2000s when a lot of internet-based companies went out of business because they were overvalued. So these companies were spending more money than they made. And eventually they ran out of cash, and so many of them had to file for bankruptcy. PayPal was in a similar situation where they were spending more money than they were making. They ran out of cash, and they needed to find a way to make money. So they started charging their users fees for certain transactions. For example, if you wanted to transfer money from your bank account to your PayPal account or vice versa, they would charge a fee for that. If you wanted to use your PayPal balance to buy something on eBay, they would charge a fee for that. At first, the users weren't happy about these fees, but eventually they got used to it. As you can imagine, all of these fees really limited their growth potential. They could only grow as big as the amount of money that they could make through these fees. They needed to find a way to scale. One day, Peter Thiel had an idea. He realized that they didn't need to be limited by the fees that they charged their users, because they could simply acquire a large enough user base and then sell advertising to those users. So for example, if you log into your PayPal account today, you will notice that there are advertisements all over the place. On the top, there's a big banner advertisement. There's advertisements on the side. There's even advertisements at the bottom. So if you look around your PayPal account, you will notice all these advertisements. Well, that's exactly how PayPal makes most of their money today. And Peter Thiel realized this early on, and he convinced the rest of the executive board to go all in on selling ads to their users. Now this created a bit of tension between him and Musk, because Musk was uncomfortable with the idea of selling ads to their users. So he left PayPal in early 2000 and went on to found his next company. But without Musk at the helm, PayPal was able to grow very quickly. They had a massive user base of people who were buying things on eBay, and they were able to sell ads to these people. Their revenue exploded. They were making more money than they had ever made before. Peter Thiel became very rich as a result of this. In fact, in February of 2002, PayPal went public. It was one of the hottest IPOs in history. On the first day of trading, their stock price increased by 169%. When this happened, Peter Thiel became a billionaire overnight. In fact, he became the 7th richest person in the world. But while PayPal was doing really well, another company was doing even better, and that was eBay. As you probably know, eBay was one of the biggest websites on the internet. It was one of the biggest places where people were buying and selling things. And if you bought or sold anything on eBay, you likely used PayPal. But even though PayPal was doing really well, eBay was doing even better. In fact, in 2002, eBay acquired a large stake in PayPal. And they basically told them that if they wanted to continue growing, they needed to be acquired by eBay. So PayPal agreed to be acquired by eBay, and it was one of the largest acquisitions in corporate history. So in July of 2002, PayPal was acquired by eBay for $1.5 billion. This meant that Peter Thiel would no longer be CEO of PayPal because eBay already had an existing CEO. But before we get into who that was, I want to mention that Thiel actually asked the judge to allow him to keep the PayPal.com domain name because he thought it was a cool name. So he asked the judge to allow him to keep it. But the judge denied his request and said that the domain name belonged to the new merged company. So Thiel actually owned the PayPal.com domain name for a few months after the acquisition until he finally gave it up. Anyway, after the acquisition, Peter Thiel became the president of eBay. But eBay wasn't interested in having someone else in charge of PayPal. They wanted to have full control over PayPal. So in late 2002, they forced Peter Thiel to leave eBay and they brought in their own CEO. That person was John Donahoe, who previously worked at Bain & Company. He was a management consultant, so eBay brought him in to run PayPal. When he took over PayPal, he had 3 goals in mind. His first goal was to grow the number of merchants that accepted PayPal. His second goal was to grow the number of personal users that used PayPal. And his third goal was to grow the number of transactions that took place through PayPal. When he took over, only 300,000 merchants accepted PayPal, but he grew that number to over 1 million merchants by the time he left. He also grew the number of personal users and the number of transactions taking place through PayPal. Overall, he did a really good job running PayPal. But in 2015, eBay decided to spin off PayPal as its own independent company once again. By this point, PayPal was big enough and profitable enough to stand on its own 2 feet. It didn't need to be a subsidiary of eBay anymore. So in July of 2014, eBay announced that they would be spinning off PayPal as its own independent company once again. They filed the necessary paperwork with the SEC, and then they started telling investors that starting in mid-2015, they would be spinning off PayPal. And so, in 2015, PayPal became its own independent company once again. Don Schulman became the CEO of PayPal, and he is still the CEO of PayPal today. Under his leadership, PayPal has continued to grow. In fact, today they are one of the largest payment processors in the world. They handle over $1 trillion worth of payments every single year. When PayPal was founded, the goal was to make it easy for people to pay each other over the internet. That's what XCOM and Confinity set out to do. They wanted to make it easy for people to send each other money. But over the years, PayPal has evolved into much more than just a simple payment processor. They have expanded into many different areas. For example, they offer a service called Venmo, which allows you to split bills with friends. They offer a service called Braintree, which allows businesses to accept credit cards and PayPal. They offer a service called Honey, which is a coupon code website. And they offer a service called iPayment, which allows brick-and-mortar businesses to accept credit cards and PayPal. So overall, PayPal has grown into a huge company. They are one of the largest payment processors in the world. And it all started with 2 small companies that wanted to make it easier for people to pay each other over the internet. Would you have invested in PayPal? Would you invest in PayPal today? Comment down below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my video on Elon Musk's first company, Zip2. I think you'll really like it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a lot. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, be sure to share this video with your friends, especially if they are interested in business or entrepreneurship. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe. We would love to have you join our community. Thank you so much for watching.